Now, obviously, one of the groups that we are trying to deal with all the time now lately, because of the fiddling, if you like, with superannuation and the fiddling with retirees' incomes, which I find really difficult to understand. As far as I'm concerned, I think it's just something you just leave alone, because people have a right to plan their future, and you can't keep interfering with that right by taking money off them here and there. It isn't fair. It's inhuman. So I'm against it totally. And we have as our next guest Ian Henschke from National Seniors Australia. Welcome, Ian.
Oh, hello, Graham, and thank you very much for having us on the show. You might remember our Deputy Chair, Ross Glossop, wrote to you about a year ago after you wrote in the paper that governments were fond of sending out raiding parties on retirees when the franking credits issue first was raised, because I think you were one of the first people that said that seniors ought to get themselves organised if they were going to fight this, and in a strange sort of way, Graham, or do I call you Richo, you started this.
Well, I think you were just getting run over, and there's no point in that. You've got to fight back, and to fight back, you have to organise. It's no good for individuals to fight back if they have no backing from others. And so it's just seemed to me obvious that this was there was a crying need for you to organise, because what was happening was annoying me, because, you know, you're easy to pick on. If you're a government, it's pretty easy to say, right, we'll take another bit off that lot, that they can afford it. It's just too easy for governments to do.
Well, I found it very interesting that Mr Albanese, who was just on your program, said that he wanted to listen. I mean, you sent that message out right back in March last year. We listened that we should get organised, and we formed a group called the Alliance for a Fairer Retirement System. So National Seniors joined with others, including Professor Deborah Ralston and others. And later in the year, we went to Canberra and we talked about it. We talked about it again. We had a summit in October, and Robert Gottliebsen came to that summit and spoke there. And he even gave Mr Bowen a range of options that could have actually saved that policy from being a disastrous policy on election day. But unfortunately, or now we know as history, that the reaction was, if you don't like it, vote for the other side.
Yeah, well, that wasn't a particularly helpful line, I don't think. And I think on reflection, Chris Bowen would probably want to take that one back. I think you've got to be a lot more careful than that. But also, this is a very difficult area for governments. If you want to put your hand in the pockets of seniors, I think you, for a start, are making a huge mistake. What both parties need to do here is to just say, look, there's the system, we'll both leave it alone. Hands off, no more, well, leave it alone.
Well, look, Graham, we put out our federal election priorities, and we actually said in our opening statement that this is a figure that I want every politician to remember in Australia, that 1 in 3 voters is now aged over 60. 1 in 3 voters is now aged over 60. So one of our main calls in the election was maintain fairness in retirement incomes. And this is something that is linked into the aged care system as well, because if you don't have that money at the end of your life, then you're going to find it very difficult to have that quality of life at the end of your life.
What do we do over
around very
time,
quickly.
though? As the population ages and you've got fewer and fewer working people to pay the bills, so to speak, it's going to get harder, isn't it?
It will get harder, but that's why if you allow people the opportunity to save for their retirement, and in fact, I suppose we've fiddled with the retirement system, as you said, and we've managed to create a system that's pretty wonky. In fact, if you compare it to other systems around the world, ours doesn't actually come up that well. So we can do a lot better. We like to be top in sport and we like to be top in other areas of activity, but I don't think we've got to the top of how to run a retirement system in Australia. And I think that both sides of politics need to come together on this, and National Seniors and the Alliance for a Fairer Retirement System is calling for a summit where they can look at the retirement system and we can actually set it right. The very things you're talking about. Put some rules in place and leave them in place so people have consistency. We want sustainability. We want fairness. We want consistency and reliability in the retirement system. Now, that is something that has been overlooked, but it can't be overlooked anymore because we've got an ageing population that needs care, and we're already seeing at the beginnings now, it breaking down at the edges. 1 in 3 women on the pension is living in poverty. We hear it all the time now that home ownership is slipping away. So people who retire and own their own home, they're okay generally because that's one big cost they haven't got to bear. So it is something that's there, and there have been report after report written on it, and now's the time to do something about it. I think it's fantastic that you, as a former minister in this area, are saying to leave the system alone, to make the system fair and sustainable, and leave it so that people can get on with their lives without that fear that there will be a raiding party sent out by a government. Your exact words, they are fond of sending out raiding parties because that group of people is disorganised. Well, we're not disorganised anymore, and I think that most observers say that that election last weekend had one big surprise in it, but it had no surprise for seniors because seniors knew that they wanted to have a voice and they had one.
Well, they certainly did. I mean, I think it's phenomenal the way you've got organised in what you'd call a relatively short time, and now you're quite a powerful lobby, and I've always believed that you, because every other bugger's got a lobby, it'd be pretty silly for you not to. I mean, you can't operate on your own. It never works that way. Now, but when we look to the future of retirement incomes, what do you think we need to do that we're not doing right now?
Well, there are a number of things that need to be done. I mean, I met a man last year who came from Canada who talked about the way that they've got a number of pillars of retirement income. And one of the things that they have is they have a sort of a base level that's provided by the government. They have, obviously, the employers provide a percentage. You have encouragement for people to save for their own retirement as well, and you perhaps have a cut-off point at the top so that you can look after all of this. But there are people with much better minds than mine that have looked at this. And as I said, Professor Deborah Ralston is the chair of the Alliance for a Fairer Retirement System. John Moroney, who did a lot of the organising from the self-managed super funds of Australia. I mean, he's a top actuary, and I mean, when you meet someone who can do numbers the way that John can, then I'm sure that there are people that can provide the answers there. And I know there are people in Treasury that have thought about this as well. There are a whole range of people that are talking about it. What we have to do is get the politicians to listen and have those sort of discussions that happened back when you were in Parliament about the future of the country, not for the next 4 years, but for the next 40 years. And I want to see seniors' issues being taken away from being a political football, and I want those issues to be treated in the same way as we treat mental health, the same way as we're now treating disability. In other words, make it bipartisan. Don't have it as us and them, younger generation versus older, Labor versus coalition. We have to have a coalition of thinking and a coalition of solutions, the very things that Bob Hawke and Paul Keating brought to the table and that made the other day people like John Howard come out and say Bob Hawke and Paul Keating were responsible for changing Australia for the better. I'd like to see that sort of cohesion, and I'd like to see, if you like, Albo and ScoMo come together on Richo one night and talk about this. And I'd be happy to either observe or take part.
Well, actually, that is a fascinating idea, and I might try and get that underway. I like that idea because I don't think that we've elevated what to do with senior citizens to the point in our lives that it should be. We're getting older. There's more and more of you and me than of the young ones, and we've got to do something about it. So actually, I will take that up with both Anthony and ScoMo and see what we can do, because I'd really like to see that discussion. I think everyone would like to see that discussion, wouldn't they?
Oh, they certainly would. And the other people that have been forgotten in this equation, we've mentioned the women who often don't have high superannuation because they've been caring for kids and then they often care for elderly relatives and they miss out. But there are the carers, the thousands and hundreds of thousands of people who do caring, unpaid work every day. They're often forgotten as well. And as I said, there are places that are doing it better than we are, and we can do a lot better. We are a rich country and we can do a lot better when it comes to things such as pension poverty. Our number one thing that we're going to be fighting on as we enter this new era is fighting to fix pension poverty and to reduce those ridiculous home care wait lists that are there at the moment, where there's more than 130,000 people waiting for home care. They may not be hot topic issues that are always in the front and centre of the minds of politicians, but they may well be a bit like franking credits. They might suddenly become something that people get motivated on, and they may even vote on it. So that's why it's best for both parties to actually get together and have a policy that is fair for all Australians.
No, I agree with that 100%. And I don't mind the idea of another summit. You know, some people might say we're overdoing them, but in an area as important as this, what I'd like to see is much more cooperation between the major parties. If we could take this out of politics completely, then I think we can get a system going that'll work and that'll give you certainty. Because that's the thing, I reckon, that most retirees want out of life is certainty. And we don't provide that. There's always that hesitation. Will they come after me tomorrow? And I think,
yes.
You know, that's the thing we've got to get rid of, because people are entitled, I think, to in their latter years to relax. They shouldn't have to worry about the knock on the door. And I'm with you on that one. We'll see what we can do.
Well, I'm glad to take part, and also tell you that there's another brilliant mind out there, is Michael Rice, who's just been involved with the Rice-Warner group there, and he's put his mind to these things. There are some great minds out there that have put their mind to this, and as you heard tonight, Mr Albanese said he wants to listen. Well, this is an area he can start listening in, and I think if the Liberal coalition also wants to listen, they can listen, and I think you're right. We've got to do something about it. 1 in 3 voters is over 60. 5 million Australians are 60 and over. We've got 2.5 million Australians on the pension. Some of them are doing very poorly, and that's not good enough in this country. And then we've got, as I said, all the other issues with aged care. It's an important issue. And in fact, I know that Paul Keating's put his mind to it as well. He was talking about it about a year ago as well. So it'll be a great summit, and maybe we should actually push it, and let's launch it here tonight, Richo.
Yeah, let's launch it right now, because I can tell you this, I'll be on to ScoMo tomorrow about it. Anthony, I think, dare say we'll know about it very quickly. Thanks very much for your time, Ian. I appreciate it very much.
No, it's an absolute pleasure to be able to talk about these issues. Thank you so much.
Good on you. I mean, what a terrific spokesman that bloke is. You don't get many better than that.